The winter sun hung weakly above the alien marketplace, casting a pale blue light across the busy streets. The air was sharp and cold, pushing people to walk faster, their breath turning into little clouds as they hurried from one stall to another. Bright neon signs flickered above the shops, but even their glow felt tired today, like the whole market was holding its breath. In the middle of this noisy place stood a tiny alien child. No older than 8, she was thin, her clothes worn and patched too many times. Her hands shivered as she held a small fruit basket in front of her. Hoping someone would buy at least one piece, her eyes were big and worried. The kind of eyes that already knew too much pain for her age. She quietly whispered to each passerby, "Please, buy one, please." But her voice was soft. Weak, almost lost in the wind, people glanced at her, then looked away. Some felt pity, others felt fear, because they knew who controlled this part of the street. Soon, 3 older alien boys moved toward her. They were big for their age, loud, confident, and cruel. They walked like they owned the ground beneath their feet. Their leader, a tall boy with a sharp grin, pushed the little girl's basket with his boot. The fruit rolled across the icy ground, bouncing under people's shoes. The girl gasped and fell to her knees, trying to pick up the pieces. Her hands shook harder now as she reached for the bruised fruit. The boys laughed loudly, enjoying the scene. The leader leaned in and whispered, "Beg louder." "If you want to keep your basket," the girl's throat tightened. Fear froze her voice, but the bullies didn't wait. They grabbed her arm and forced her to kneel in the center of the walkway. The leader shouted so everyone could hear, "Come on, Beg. Show everyone how weak you are." More people stopped to look, but nobody stepped forward. Everyone knew the bullies belonged to a powerful family in the district. No one wanted trouble. No one wanted to get involved. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She lowered her head, breathing fast, her small shoulders shaking under the weight of humiliation. And then, something changed in the air. At the edge of the market, a human man walked in slowly, carrying a bag of supplies. He was taller than most of the aliens, broad-shouldered, his steps steady and calm. He had tired eyes, but a warm face, the kind that made children feel safe. He noticed the crowd before he noticed the girl. Then he saw the fruit scattered on the ground, the girl crying, and the 3 bullies standing over her. His steps stopped completely. His hand tightened around the handle of the bag. The leader poked the little girl again, forcing her head lower. "Beg. Beg, or we break your basket forever." The human felt a strange heaviness inside his chest. It started as anger, then grew into something deeper, something protective, something he thought he had buried years ago. He took a slow breath, then began walking forward. One firm step at a time, the girl heard footsteps behind her and looked up. Tears blurred her vision, but she saw a tall silhouette approaching. The bullies saw him too. "What do you want, human?" The leader snapped, "Go away. This is not your business." But the human didn't answer. Instead, he crouched beside the girl and began picking up the fruit one by one. His hands were gentle, his movements calm. The girl stared at him in confusion, not understanding why a stranger would help her. The leader pushed the human's shoulder, but the man didn't move even an inch. It was like pushing a wall. The bully tried again, harder. But the human remained still. Slowly, the human stood up. His eyes met the leader's eyes, and in a quiet, steady voice, he said one word. "Enough." That single word froze the bullies, froze the crowd, even froze the winter wind for a moment. It wasn't loud, but it carried a power they didn't expect. The leader growled and pulled out a small electric shock stick. Sparks danced at its tip. A few people gasped. The little girl cried out, "Please, stop. Don't fight." But the human didn't back away. He didn't even blink. He took one step forward, placing himself completely between the bullies and the child. The leader swung the shock stick toward him. Aiming for his arm, the crowd held its breath. But the human moved with surprising speed. He caught the bully's wrist, tightened his grip, and snapped the shock stick in half with his free hand. The broken pieces clattered on the ground, the sparks dying instantly. Silence spread across the marketplace like a wave. The bullies stared at him with wide, shocked eyes. No one had ever stood up to them like that. The little girl slowly stood behind the human. Gripping his jacket tightly, her fear softened a little, replaced by hope she didn't understand yet. The human looked at the bullies with calm eyes. No anger, only determination, and for the first time in a long time, the girl felt like someone was truly protecting her, and this was only the beginning. The bullies stood frozen for a moment, shocked that a human had broken their shock stick like it was nothing. Their eyes widened, and their confidence cracked just a little. The leader tried to hide his fear by forcing a laugh, but his voice shook as he spoke. "You think you're some kind of hero? This girl belongs to our street. We make the rules here." The human didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. His calmness was almost unnatural. Like nothing could shake him, he slowly crouched again and helped the girl pick up the last pieces of fruit from the ground. His hands were gentle, careful, as if he was afraid one wrong move would hurt her more. The girl watched him with wide, uncertain eyes. She wasn't used to kindness. She wasn't used to anyone protecting her. Her small fingers trembled as she held onto her basket. The human stood up and turned slightly so the girl remained behind him. He faced the bullies again, and his voice was steady as stone when he said, "No one belongs to you." The leader's face twisted with anger. He stepped forward and shouted, "This is our area. You think because you're human, you can do whatever you want?" But the human didn't react. He only shifted his weight. Ready if the bullies attacked again. People in the crowd had started whispering now. Some were shocked, some impressed, a few even hopeful. It had been years since anyone tried to stand up to the bully group, and a human doing it made the scene even more dramatic. The second bully, shorter but broader, cracked his knuckles and stepped forward. "You want to protect her? Fine," he growled. "Let's see how long you last." The girl gasped and grabbed the human's coat. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Please, don't fight. They hurt everyone." The human looked back at her for a moment. His eyes softened. Then he spoke in the same calm tone. "I won't let them hurt you." Something about those words made the girl's heart ache. She had never heard anyone say that to her. The second bully charged. Swinging his fist toward the human's face, the crowd tensed, expecting a hit. But the human dodged easily. It looked almost effortless, like he had done this 1,000 times before. He stepped aside and gently pushed the bully's arm away. The bully stumbled forward, losing balance and falling to the icy ground. Laughter rippled through the crowd, weak but real. The bully's face turned red with embarrassment. The leader clenched his teeth and signaled the third boy. The fastest one, the third bully, rushed toward the human, aiming a kick at his ribs. The human caught the kick mid-air with one hand, his grip strong enough to stop all momentum. The bully yelped in pain. The human didn't hurt him further. He simply pushed him back and said, "Enough," again. The word echoed with the same steady force as before. The leader now looked uncertain, his confidence fading. But he knew if he backed down in front of everyone, his reputation would collapse. So he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communicator device. The girl saw it, and her heart dropped. She whispered in terror, "He's calling the older boys. They are worse." The human stepped forward, his voice firmer. "Stop," but the leader pressed the button anyway. "We'll see how brave you are when the real fighters come," he sneered. They'll tear you apart. The human didn't flinch. He stepped even closer. The leader backed away instinctively. You don't need more trouble, the human said. Let the girl go and walk away. But the leader scoffed. She's our target. She works our street. Without her fear, others won't stay afraid. The girl felt a wave of shame and panic wash over her. She lowered her head, guilt crushing her tiny shoulders. She whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause this. The human knelt beside her and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You did nothing wrong, he said softly. They're the ones who should be sorry. The crowd fell silent again. Many people felt the truth in his words. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed from behind the stalls. The older boys had arrived tall. Muscular aliens, known for causing real harm. They cracked their necks and grinned when they saw the human standing alone. The leader smirked, gaining confidence again. Now you're dead, human. The girl grabbed the human's hand tightly. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, Run? Please run. They will hurt you. But the human gently squeezed her hand back. His voice calm as ever. I'm not leaving you. The older boys approached, forming a half circle around him. The leader pointed at the human and shouted, Get him. The crowd started backing away. Some hid behind stalls. Others watched with dread, expecting the human to fall, but the human didn't waste a second. As the first older bully swung a massive punch, the human stepped in, blocked it, and drove his elbow into the bully's ribs. The big alien staggered backward in pain. Another one rushed in, but the human shifted aside and swept his leg. The bully crashing into the ground, the girl watched with wide eyes. She had never seen anyone fight like this. It wasn't wild or angry. It was controlled, protective. Like every move was for her safety. The leader shouted in frustration, Why are you doing this? She's nothing. The human's eyes flashed with emotion as he replied, She's a child. The remaining older boys hesitated, fear creeping into their expressions. No one expected a human to fight like this. The little girl felt her fear slowly changing into something new. Something warm. She didn't know the human's name. She didn't know why he cared, but she felt safe for the first time in her life. And as the last bully tried to attack, the human blocked, countered, and pushed him to the ground like the others. The leader stood trembling now, holding his broken shock stick, staring at the human like he was some kind of impossible force. The marketplace had changed. The fear that ruled this area cracked, just a little, but enough. The human turned to the girl and whispered, You're safe now. But deep inside, both of them knew. This fight was only the beginning. The marketplace slowly returned to normal after the fight. But the air was still tense. People whispered from behind their stalls, eyes following the human and the small alien girl as they walked away from the area where the bullies had been defeated. The ground was still scattered with broken fruit and crushed ice. But the girl tried not to look at it. She held her basket tightly, as if it was the only thing she owned in the world. The human walked beside her, his steps calm and steady. He didn't speak at first, giving the girl time to breathe. She kept her head low, afraid that someone else might yell at her or blame her for the trouble. Her fingers trembled around the handle of her basket. Finally, the human stopped near a quiet corner of the market, away from the noise and the curious eyes. A small supply stall stood nearby, its warm light making the space feel safer. He crouched down so he was at her eye level and asked gently, Are you hurt? The girl quickly shook her head. No. I'm fine, she whispered, though her voice cracked. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ground. She was scared to meet his gaze, scared he might yell or walk away like everyone else. The human noticed the way she held her arm close to her body. Almost hiding it, he spoke softly. Let me see your arm. She hesitated, her breath shaky, but slowly she lifted her sleeve. Underneath was a dark bruise, old and painful, wrapping around her forearm like a cruel mark. The human's heart tightened, his jaw clenched. "How long have they been hurting you?" he asked, his voice low but full of concern. The girl looked away. "A long time," she whispered. "They take my fruit every day. They say this street belongs to them. They say if I don't listen, I will be thrown out." Her voice became smaller with each word, as if she believed she shouldn't speak at all. The human took a slow breath, trying to steady the anger rising in him. "Where are your parents?" he asked carefully. The girl's shoulders stiffened, her lips pressed together, her eyes filled slowly with tears she tried to hide. She shook her head. I don't have parents anymore," she said softly. "My mother got sick last year." "And my father?" "He never came back from the mines." The human felt a deep ache in his chest. He hadn't expected that answer. The girl hesitated and then continued, "I live in the old storage room behind the market. The owner lets me stay there if I clean the place. I sell fruit to buy food, but the bullies take most of it." Her voice cracked again. "Sometimes I don't eat." The words hit the human hard. A memory flashed in his mind, a memory he wished he could erase. A small hospital room, a child-sized bed, a soft voice calling him Papa, and then silence. A silence that had lived in his heart ever since. He cleared his throat and spoke gently. "You're very brave." The girl looked up, confused. "Brave?" she whispered, as if the word didn't belong to her. "Very brave," the human repeated. "You survive alone. You work every day, you don't give up." "That's bravery," the girl blinked, tears slipping down her cheeks. No one had ever told her she was brave. No one had ever seen her as anything but weak or worthless. The human reached into his bag and took out a small packet of food. "Eat," he said softly. "You need strength." She hesitated, unsure if she was allowed. Then hunger won, and she opened the packet carefully, taking small bites like she was afraid the food might disappear. The human watched her quietly, his heart both hurting and healing at the same time. There was something about the girl that reminded him of the daughter he had lost. Something in her trembling voice, in her terrified eyes, in her hope that flickered even through fear. After a few moments, the girl whispered, "Why did you help me?" The human looked at her, his voice steady. "Because no child should suffer alone." The girl held the food packet close to her chest, as if protecting it, her voice barely audible. "People don't help me. They say it's dangerous. They say if they help, the bullies will hurt their families." The human nodded, understanding. "Sometimes people are scared," he said. "But that doesn't mean you should be left alone." A soft wind blew through the market, carrying the faint smell of baked bread and cold metal. The girl wiped her tears with her sleeve, leaving a faint stain of dust and sadness behind. After a moment, she whispered something she had kept inside for a long time. "I thought maybe I deserved it." The human's eyes widened. "No," he said firmly. "No child deserves pain. No child deserves fear." The girl sniffed, looking at him as if trying to understand why he cared so much. She took a small breath and whispered, "Can I stay near you for a little while? Just until the bullies leave?" The human nodded without hesitation. "You can stay with me as long as you want." A tiny spark of warmth lit inside her chest, something she had not felt in a very long time. But as they rested in that quiet corner of the market, a shadow moved far behind them. The older bullies, humiliated and angry, were watching, whispering, planning. The human didn't know yet, but danger was already finding its way back to them, and the girl's fight for safety was far from over. The quiet corner of the marketplace felt peaceful for a moment. The little alien girl sat beside the human, holding the food packet close as if it was the most precious thing she owned. Her body was finally relaxing, her breathing softening. Her eyes no longer filled with terror, but peace never lasted long in this place. Not for her. Far behind them, hidden between the stalls, the older bullies watched with dark anger burning in their eyes. The humiliation of losing to a human was something they could not accept. Their pride was bruised, their control threatened, and they whispered to each other like snakes in the shadows. Planning their revenge, the human didn't notice them yet. He was focused on the girl, making sure she finished her food. He gently wiped a small smear of crumbs from her cheek. She flinched at the touch at first, then slowly relaxed, trusting him a little more. "Do you have somewhere safe to sleep tonight?" the human asked softly. The girl shook her head. "The storage room gets very cold. Sometimes the door doesn't close. And sometimes animals come inside," she whispered. Hugging her knees closer, the human felt something twist in his chest. It was anger, it was sadness, it was a deep protective instinct he had not felt in years. He wanted to tell her she could come with him, but he didn't know if she would feel safe hearing that yet. He looked around the market, searching for a safer path home. "Let's walk," he said gently. "I'll take you somewhere warm for now." The girl nodded, trusting him more than she trusted the entire world. But as they stepped onto the main path, a faint sound cut through the crowd. A whisper, a footstep, a shifting shadow. The girl's small hand tightened around the human's coat. Her voice shook. "They're here." Before the human could ask who, 5 older bullies stepped out from between the stalls. Blocking the path ahead, their leader smirked, his eyes cold and sharp. "Thought you could hide from us?" he sneered. "Thought you could take what belongs to us?" The human stepped slightly in front of the girl. "She doesn't belong to you," he said calmly. The leader laughed. "Everything on the street belongs to us." People began moving away again, the same fearful pattern repeating. They whispered among themselves, but kept a safe distance. No one wanted to be caught in the middle. The girl held tightly to the human's arm. She whispered shakily, "They hit people. They break bones. They don't care." The human gently placed his hand over hers. "I won't let them touch you," he said softly. The bullies spread out, surrounding them, cutting off any escape. Their heavy boots thudded against the icy ground, echoing through the market like a warning drum. The leader stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "You embarrassed us in front of everyone," he growled. "Now we're going to show you what happens when someone challenges us." The human stood tall, calm as ever. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Walk away." The bullies laughed. The sound was cruel, cold, mocking. One of the older boys pulled out a long metal rod, dented and stained from past fights. "Let's see if your bones break as easy as your words," he spat. The girl's breathing became fast and uneven. "Please, please stop. Don't hurt him. Don't hurt anyone," she cried, but the bullies were already moving. The first one lunged forward, swinging the metal rod at the human's ribs. The human stepped aside quickly, grabbing the bully's wrist and twisting it just enough to make him drop the weapon. The rod clattered on the ground. The second bully jumped in. Aiming for the human's back, the human turned, blocking the hit with his forearm and pushing the boy back. The leader hissed, "Don't just stand there. Get him." 3 bullies rushed at once. The human grabbed one by the collar and shoved him into the other. Both fell hard onto the ground. The third tried to wrap his arms around the human's waist, but the human elbowed him gently in the shoulder. Breaking his grip, the crowd gasped as the older boys stumbled, shocked that a lone human could repel them so easily. But the fight wasn't over. 2 more bullies moved in from behind the human. The girl screamed, "Behind you!" The human spun quickly, blocking a punch and stepping aside. letting the attacker collide with his own friend. They both fell down with loud groans. The leader grew angrier with every second. His pride bleeding, his reputation crumbling. He grabbed the fallen metal rod and ran forward. Swinging it wildly, the human caught the rod with one hand. Gripping it tightly, the leader tried to pull it free. But it was useless. The human spoke calmly. No more. Then he snapped the metal rod in half as easily as he had snapped the shock stick. The pieces dropped to the ground with a cold metallic echo. The bullies stared in disbelief. One of them whispered, "He's not normal. He's too strong." The leader stepped back, fear finally appearing in his eyes. The human stepped forward, his voice steady. "This ends now." The bullies looked at each other, their confidence broken. Their courage drained, their leader trembled. Realizing he had lost control, one by one they backed away. Retreating through the crowd, the people watched silently as the group ran into the dark alleys. Their reins shaken for the first time. The girl collapsed to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. The human immediately lowered himself beside her, gently holding her shoulders. "You're safe," he whispered. "It's over," she cried into his chest, her tiny hands gripping his coat, all the fear, pain, and loneliness pouring out at once. The human wrapped his arms around her, protecting her from the cold and the memories, and in that moment, she felt something she thought she would never feel again. Hope, but deep inside, the human knew the fight had changed everything, and the path ahead would be even harder, because now, the bullies would not forget, and neither would he. The marketplace slowly settled after the bullies ran away, but the silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of shock, of realization, of people witnessing something they had never seen on this street. A human standing against the bullies, protecting a child no one else dared to help. The little alien girl clung to the human's coat, crying softly. Her small fingers trembled. Not from fear now, but from the sudden release of everything she had been holding inside for months. The human held her gently, letting her cry, letting her breathe, letting her feel safe, maybe for the first time in her life. He whispered, "It's all right. You're safe now." After a long moment, the girl pulled back and wiped her cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen. But there was a spark there that hadn't existed before. A tiny spark of hope. "Come," the human said softly. "Let's move away from this place." He stood and offered his hand. The girl stared at it for a moment, and placed her small hand in his. The warmth of his grip steadied her, guided her. They walked through the marketplace, the crowd parting silently. Some people bowed their heads in respect. Others looked away in guilt. A few even whispered thanks under their breath. But the human kept walking, focused only on the trembling child beside him. They reached a small resting area near the market entrance, a quiet bench under a dim lamp. Snowflakes drifted down slowly, settling on the girl's hair. The human brushed them away gently. "Can you sit?" he asked. She nodded and sat on the edge of the bench, hugging her basket tightly as if it were a shield. The human sat beside her, giving her space. "I need to ask you something," he said gently. "Do you want to stay in the storage room tonight?" The girl froze. Her breathing changed, her shoulders tightened. Slowly she whispered, "No. It's cold and dark, and I get scared. But I don't have anywhere else to go." Her voice cracked at the end. The human nodded slowly. "I thought so," he said softly. "That place is not safe for a child." The girl looked up at him nervously. "What? What should I do?" He took a slow breath, choosing his words carefully. "If you want, you can come with me," he said. "Just for tonight, somewhere warm, somewhere safe." The girl's eyes widened, confusion mixing with fear and hope. "Stay. With you?" She whispered, Yes, the human replied softly. Only if you want to. The girl looked down at her tiny hands. She wasn't used to choices. She wasn't used to kindness. Her mind raced with fear. But her heart felt something different, something warm, something she had almost forgotten. Will you be angry if I stay? She asked, her voice small. The human shook his head gently. Never. She hesitated, then whispered, Will they come back? The bullies? The human looked toward the dark alleys where the bullies had disappeared. Maybe, he admitted calmly. But if they do, they will not touch you. The girl swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears again. Why are you helping me? The human looked at the snow-covered ground, his voice low. Because, once, a long time ago, I couldn't help someone I loved. The girl didn't fully understand, but she felt the sadness in his voice, the heaviness behind the words. He continued, I couldn't save my daughter. The girl's heart tightened. She whispered softly, I'm sorry. The human forced a small, warm smile. Thank you, he said. But you're here now. The girl looked at him with gentle, uncertain eyes. Do you want me to come with you? Yes, the human said honestly. I want you to be safe. I want you to have food, warmth, sleep, peace. The girl's lips trembled. Her voice came out in a breath, barely a whisper. Can I really stay? Even if I'm not human? The human's heart squeezed painfully. Child, he said softly, your species doesn't matter to me. She stared at him, confused but hopeful. Then, what matters? The human placed a gentle hand on her head. You matter, he said. Your safety matters. Your life matters. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then she nodded slowly, uncertain but trusting. Okay, she whispered. I want to stay with you. The human smiled gently and stood, offering his hand again. The girl hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. This time, her grip was not from fear. It was from trust. They began walking toward the exit of the market. Snow fell more heavily now, covering the streets. The girl shivered slightly, and the human lifted her up without asking, letting her rest her head on his shoulder. She held on to him tightly, whispering into his coat, Thank you for helping me, for seeing me. The human whispered back, You're safe now. As they reached the main street, a market officer approached them nervously. Sir, he said, we saw everything. Witnesses have reported the attack. The bullies will be dealt with. The human nodded, relieved. The officer then looked at the girl. Do you wish to stay with him? The girl nodded slowly, gripping the human's coat tighter. Yes. Please, I want to stay. He helped me. The officer smiled softly and handed the human a small data tablet. Then you are allowed temporary guardianship, he said. Protection forms have been approved. The girl's eyes widened. Does that mean I can stay with him for real? The human smiled gently. Yes. It means you're coming home with me. The girl hugged him tightly, her tears soaking into his coat. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. She felt chosen. She felt loved as the snow continued to fall. The human carried her toward their new future, one step at a time. And the little alien girl whispered one final trembling sentence, full of gratitude, full of hope, full of rebirth. Thank you for choosing me.